Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Today's show is brought to you by the award-winning NordVPN. I've been using Nord for years now because it secures my internet traffic and keeps my data private, especially when traveling or on public Wi-Fi. NordVPN has servers in 60 countries, does not log your data, unlocks Netflix and other geographic restrictions on entertainment content, and has a 30-day money-back guarantee. To get the best deal on a subscription, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com/NordVPN or use the promo code BTFuture. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Matt Johnston. He's the CEO and founder of Guide Social. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing is really innovative and cool, but maybe before we get into all that fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Cool, yeah. I grew up near Syracuse.
Okay, very cool.
For those of you who live in the States, I grew up near Syracuse, New York, so it's like upstate New York. And small town. I've had a billion careers, I feel like, over time. I went to college up there too, and I was obsessed when I was in college for some reason I had a great professor, as sometimes happens in college, and he sort of became a mentor, and I was obsessed with getting into theater.
Okay.
So I actually ended up starting like a theater career out of college. During high school, whatever. There's not, like, who knows during high school? I was in a ska band. That's about all I can say about high school.
So
you want to know what we were called? We were called A Chick Named Kate.
That's awesome.
It's perfect, right? Perfect.
No,
but then I really, go ahead.
No, I think a lot of people in tech or in the online space are heavily still into music, still play music, did play music. I find that the connection between the two is so similar. And I think even the industries are kind of similar in a lot of respects.
Yeah, totally. It's like that sort of like casual, innovative, like I think a lot of people in tech and such don't, like, they almost think of themselves as artists. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Sure. So what did you actually take though in university and why?
Oh yeah, I went, so I was in college. Yeah. I was an English and a political science major.
Okay.
And I don't know, I just really took to theater. And so I ended up out of school, I ended up dropping myself in Manhattan, and I directed plays for 7 years.
Wow.
In New York City. I was just sort of grinding away in the New York City theater scene and having a lot of fun, making a lot of friends, being a 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old. And eventually I just like sort of like my passion for it ran out. And it was a grind. Like I was like working like 9 to 5 in a job that I wasn't super passionate about. And then I would go direct plays from like 7 to 10. And, I just sort of ended up, like just sort of, I wanted to try something different. So I went back to grad school. So I went back to Syracuse to the Newhouse School.
Okay.
In their journalism program. And so I got an MS there in broadcast and digital journalism because I always enjoyed media. I was like the sports director of my radio station in college, and I was always like, I think I might get back into radio because radio used to be my huge piece of me, actually. I was like, for a year, I worked in radio operations, and I was on air at a public radio station before I moved to Manhattan. And then all during college, I called play-by-play for like hundreds of games on the radio. Cool. And I just sort of loved that stuff. So I was like, what should I go back to school with to get like a real career? Because I was directing plays for all those years. And I was like, the media's cool. So that's when I went to Syracuse. I ended up producing TV news in Las Vegas for a couple of years, and then eventually transitioned to digital, which is sort of where I ended up. So I ended up at Business Insider.
Okay.
I was there for 2 years. I helped launch Tech Insider,
Wow.
which was their sort of tech spinoff blog, which ended up folding a year or two after I left. It folded folded back into Business Insider, but we were super successful on the video side, like billions and billions of views. Yeah, so I was an editor at Business Insider, and then New York Magazine hired me to build their video program from scratch. It's a huge brand, but they've been around for 60 years. You know, it's like Vulture and The Cut and all these brands, but they didn't have video.
Interesting.
And eventually they were just like, we need to have video. So they sort of poached me away from Business Insider, and they told me to build a team. And, you know, I built up a team of, you know, sort of, I think we had a little over a dozen people when I left. I briefly ran video for Men's and Women's Health after that, Runner's World, bicycling, all of those things, until that company actually sold very shortly after I got there. They were called Rodale. And then I moved on to NowThis, where I built out 3 new lifestyle channels. If you know NowThis, they're like the biggest Facebook video news publisher.
Oh, very cool.
So you've probably seen them like if you've ever watched news videos where they're like text on screen format with the big yellow text, chances are that it's a NowThis video, because they're enormous. So I built out their sports, money, and food channels, and that was successful. That was super cool. And then I started my own company. So I've had a billion careers. Like, it's just like a billion careers, but I think it's cool.
No, it's cool.
I learned a lot from them.
That's good.
I've sort of always been linked to storytelling. Like I try to like find threads throughout because I just sort of move with the wind, and I'm like a big fan of this when I talk to people, or like I consult like younger folk, like, what should I do? Like, oh, I feel like I should do this. I'm getting pressured to do this. And I'm just like, just whatever, man. Like, just go, like, do whatever your heart tells you in that moment, because who knows? Just go for it. And it always worked out for me. Like I just ended up finding my way, and things just sort of worked out how they worked out. But I do think, as I'm looking back at the threads of like a pretty cool, but like totally like all over the place career, like, I mean, it really was sort of all storytelling.
Okay.
It was all a piece of it. I mean, now we're doing video and PR and stuff, and we're doing storytelling for other companies. I started in theater. I was telling stories as a journalist. So I guess there was sort of like a storytelling thread there, if I have to look back. But yeah, certainly my resume, I don't know, it's a fun resume. I'm just sort of all over the place. I just follow my heart around the world, just see where it takes me.
Sure.
Now I have kids, so I'm not going to move anytime soon now.
No, fair enough. Well, no, but I also think too that it is good advice that you don't necessarily need to figure everything out. And I think a lot of people that will tell you they knew what they were going to do, it's so rare these days, right? That a lot of people, I think, change careers and move around a bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's so normal nowadays.
It used to have a stigma.
Yeah.
Like they would call you like a job hopper or something, but not only is it normalized, but like, stop caring what other people think already.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, no, fair enough. So what exactly is Guide Social, and why did you start it up?
I started it up because, I mean, I knew I wanted to start my own business. I was really good at social media,
okay,
in general, because that was always my thing. Was I was like the Facebook video guy. Like I went and built huge Facebook video teams, and at Business Insider, I was helping run their social media. I was rewriting and managing headlines and stuff across 250 posts a day, and so I was just, I don't know, I was looking around at small businesses, and I was kind of like, okay, I want to start my own thing. Like, how can I help small businesses? Well, I see them and they're all a little like, they all seem a little lost on social media. Maybe I can just sort of help them. I didn't know anything about like the market or anything. And so I just started working with a couple of small businesses that I was like helping them, being really underpaid to like make videos for them and like do some of their social media stuff. That's sort of how it started, was just, how can I help like more innovative small businesses make more of an impact? Because I knew that they weren't in a position to like spend tons of money on like advertising and stuff like that. So how could I help them? Because I like just really wanted to help them. Like I love like innovative little small businesses and stuff. It sort of turned into but again, like my career, because I just love to blow with the wind, it's probably hard. I have a business partner. Her name's Jamie. She's amazing. But I mean, I'm sure that I drive her crazy sometimes, because I'm always like going to the next thing. I'm just like, let's turn our company into like a manufacturer of candlesticks that like, like always trying to like change. that's obviously fake, but like I'm always like trying to like find the new thing, and I'm getting excited about it, and I have no problem like pivoting like 180 degrees at any moment because it's just exciting to me. That's what happened in the business. Like we started, like I invested in a little bit of mentorship, and I ended up doing a bunch of like Facebook ads like
Okay.
everybody else is for a while. That's like sort of, there's all these Facebook ads agencies cropping up, and I was one of them, and just sort of figuring out, and I built a great community there. And we ended up pivoting to video at a certain point, moving just to YouTube ads and like viral brand awareness campaigns. I just saw sort of like a good opportunity in YouTube ads. I still do. It's a great space to be in. We still do run some YouTube ad campaigns for some clients. It's just, I mean, obviously there's huge amount of viewership, way more potential there than television. And, you have to have the right people to do it. And there's not a lot of competition there. So it's really sort of a great space. We're sort of moving away from that a bit, but it is still a great space. And then when I was at NowThis and New York Magazine and stuff, I used to do a lot of branded content. I partnered with like Toyota and Chase and Campbell's and all of these companies to make these big branded content video campaigns. And so when I started this company, I was kind of like, oh, I can do that kind of stuff in-house. Like I've got all of why don't I just do that? So then we started moving into that kind of stuff. Now we're going into more PR type stuff too. So, I mean, I think just like with anything, and for the entrepreneurs listening, like again, like unless you have a physical product, which is like, and again, even with physical products, but like sometimes a company is built around one physical product. Sometimes it's a company like mine, which is more of a service related thing. So it's a little bit more malleable, but I always recommend following your gut and not being afraid to pivot at the beginning, because I just feel like everybody figures it out.
Yeah.
I mean, it figures itself out if you trust your gut.
No, that's actually really good advice. So you guys recently launched a new program called Vesta. What exactly is it, and what are you guys doing with it?
We're trying to like help. I wanted to create something like totally different that's never existed before. And we were sort of thinking about that. And then the first question that we asked ourselves was like, who do we like working with the most? So like, who do we want to serve the most? And so we've had some really great clients that are small businesses with innovative products. Like I think our best one, like our favorite one that we'd worked with over the past year, we're still working with them. They're called Free Bowler, and they developed this device that it's the first ever non-electric ball thrower of cricket balls.
Okay.
And I don't know how much you all know about cricket. Maybe not much. I didn't know much before I took them on, that's for sure. But it's like a baseball pitching machine.
Okay.
But it's the first one that sort of replicates the experience of being with an actual of being in an actual game, except it's not electric, and it's portable, and it's much cheaper than the comp. So it's completely innovative. Nobody's ever done it before, and they have this great like spirit. And we were just sort of like, it would be really cool if we could find ways to continuously work with those folks, and even folks that have some like lower price products than that, even because having been in the Facebook ad side for so long, I sort of know what the ROIs look like. And if you have a product under $100, it's extreme. Like the calculators don't work out very well for you for running direct response advertising. They just don't. I mean, some people hack it, but especially if you're at $50 and under, it's going to be really hard to profitably run direct response advertising. And so I'm just thinking to myself, like, and Jamie too, we were just like, okay, so the people that we want to serve the most can't be served by direct advertising. So how are they going to actually like make a dent at all? A lot of them probably just feel like they're going to have to fold at some point. And maybe you are listening to this and you feel like that, if you have, I know that I've felt like that with a small business before. Like, at what point is this just not going to work anymore? Or like, how do I get seen? How do I get sales? All these things. So we developed something a little bananas to serve those folks. And basically we're basically going to be building communities for small businesses. We're going to be building communities. We're going to be generating massive amounts of social proof and endorsements that are public and hosting them all. And we're going to be paying for traffic and boosting and using all of our organic power to do it. We're building a media brand based on everything that I learned at Business Insider and Tech Insider. We're building an innovation media brand that exists now. And we're going to be using the power that we build through that brand to get lots of attention to these businesses, which they deserve, and communities. Because when you can't direct advertise, and even if you can, we're like everybody. I just think that advertising is broken right now. I just think that everything is broken.
Interesting. I would agree with you, but it's
yeah.
Why do you say
tell
that?
Me
I guess.
Why. Like, I say that because having been in that advertising world for so long, I know that all the conversations are around numbers. Like nobody gives a crap about the brand anymore. It's just like, or if they do, it's secondary to how can I put in $1, get $3 back, and like scale that forever, like, and call it a business. And I mean, one, it's a disservice to brands that do have a lot of money, because it's very hard to maintain results like that over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know. Like I would have clients and we would do great for them when I was in that space. And then like all of a sudden something weird would happen, and all of a sudden the CPA would drop, and everybody's emotions would go haywire, because it's like, oh, we're only doing 2-to-1 now, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, back in the days when you could just do blanket brand awareness TV advertising, nobody was getting that granular with everything. And businesses were still thriving because they were focused on brand and affinity and like building communities. And I just wanted to sort of return to that. And then and honestly, I think Vesta is something that every company in the world eventually should be a part of, but we're starting it just for these small businesses, and we're pricing it really low for that reason, because I think that all of my core beliefs about the sort of anti-direct response advertising world are directly related to how can you build a community, get people talking about you, get people to love you? How can you get social proof out there so that other people can tell other, like, let's make word of mouth a thing again.
Yeah.
You know?
Interesting.
And yeah. And just start using our power and my background building these big media brands to sort of leverage and get you guys a ton of awareness around your brand, because it will at the end of the day help sales a lot. But I think that if you focus on service and you focus on serving your customers and building communities around problems that you're solving as a business, at the end of the day, you will be much, much more successful. And you don't have to directly advertise. It's not going to work for you anyway. So that's why I created it. And that's why I think it's a bubble that's ready to pop. I mean, how many, like, I don't know about you, I see millions of direct response, like, gurus, like, in my Facebook and Instagram feeds all the time. Buy this, buy that, like, be in this coaching program, be in that coaching program, like, do this, do that. I'll run your Facebook ads, like, look at my my return on ad spend numbers, look at my ROIs, like, look at all of this stuff. And it's a bubble. It's a bubble that's ready to pop. And at the other side of it, there's going to be a lot of people that lose a lot of money when the bubble does pop. And I think the brands that survive are going to be the ones that have a community, the ones that are going to be a brand. And those brands need to have communities, like that Jeff Bezos quote that is really popular, which is like, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. It's about communities.
Interesting. So what are your advice though for people to actually start creating that community around their product or service now, really?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's actually what I teach. Yeah. I mean, well, create content, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, kind of like our core belief is that this is the way, like, I teach PR at a college level, and this is what I teach, is that you don't need the media to your filter. Like, back in the day when, like, Ivy Lee and all of them, like, created public relations, and as it evolved through the 50s and 60s and 70s and all of this stuff, you needed, if you were a company, you had very few ways to actually reach the masses with your messaging. The whole point of public relations was to build massive amounts of brand awareness and affinity, because you wanted to be liked. So you wanted to control the narrative. And the only way to do that was to go through the media, because they had the trumpet and you didn't. Like, you were just sitting there in your office and there was no way to reach them. Okay, so now you have the internet and now you can reach them. And so I'm trying to like help people see that there's a sea change here. I mean, you should be creating media companies within your own company. And instead of pitching the media all the time for stuff, just be your own media, like create content, create your own messaging, go reach people directly, and don't just talk about your products and services, like give them value, like focus on value. The core, it's a complicated process that takes me like weeks to teach. But basically what I do for creating content is map out who your persona or avatar is, figure out exactly who that is. I make a lifestyle map about like the core things in that life that person is, that like speaks to that person, that are core to their life. And then ask yourself, what would that person Google about that thing? And about those things that are core in their life. And then those are your headlines for content. And it's not necessarily about your product. You know, I mean, if it's like a burger brand or something, right? Like there's a lot more to somebody that goes and buys cheeseburgers than their food habits. They have like, maybe the target avatar always has kids, you know, like they have kids, or maybe they have, maybe they're usually a blue collar worker, stuff like that. Like, how can you create valuable content for those people? And then that builds a brand affinity. And all of it ends up resulting in a better business with more sales. It'll just lift you up from the bottom up if you have faith in it. But I think content is the key.
Interesting. No, I 100% agree with you. It's interesting how many people, well, I guess I would argue you probably want to be, or at least selfishly with me, I want to be on all the current channels and trying to adapt the new ones that are coming out as well. Sure, I'm creating my own content and putting them on my own channels, but I also want other people and try to leverage other people's channels to get my content out there as well. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, totally. Like media isn't dead or anything.
Sure.
I just think that there's a huge opportunity to go and reach people directly with content.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think collaborations are great. And I mean, and honestly, like shows like this, like still, like you get a platform and you get to reach people that you wouldn't reach before. And of course there's that credibility bump too. I mean, this is why Vesta is not just creating content for you. That's why we're building the media brand, because people are going to be able to go to vestamedia.io and they're going to be like, oh, this product is apparently awesome, and I found out about it, and like, you know, like they're like, it's gonna have that third party thing, right? Like it's so much more powerful when like one person tells another person how awesome your product is, rather than you telling that person how powerful it is, because it's just more, you know. It's why we read 10 Amazon reviews before I always say this, like, where's my phone? So I bought this $7 phone case the other day.
Yeah.
$7. I still read like 25 reviews before I made my decision on it, because like I need that. And so my thought was, why don't we generate that content for people, you know, so that we can start making word of mouth a thing again, because it is powerful.
No, I 100% agree with you. It's interesting how much control we have nowadays to basically put out our own stuff or add value or become our own kind of subject matter experts in whatever field we're in, right? And I think, and I would put myself in this boat, so many people are scared to start sharing content and giving their opinion online. And I think there's going to be people that agree with you, disagree with you, and everywhere in between. And that's just part of putting stuff out there. But I think just getting over that fear and actually starting to put out your own content only benefits you in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and like that's why there's this thing called this whole idea of earned media is that when you start doing your own content, you start crushing it and creating value for people, you're going to get picked up by great like shows like yours and by others, and like that's great. Like it's just going to amplify it like 10x. But how do you get seen by these media companies in the first place? Create your own content to do that, and then you can just like get the best of both worlds. And totally, like I totally understand being scared with it. I completely understand. I just think I think a couple of things. One, I think that like culture is like we're at a bit of a crossroads in culture where we're so scared of what we put online that it goes through a filter doesn't have us on the other side. Like, what comes out on the other side? Like, if Instagram is a coffee filter and we put stuff in one end, which is authentic, on the other end of what gets through that coffee filter is probably not authentic. I mean, only about 30% of it makes its way through, and the rest is some version of it that you want to be. This is why Instagram, I believe, why Instagram's getting rid of likes, so that they can get rid of that post anxiety, so that people don't feel like, because this is like a thing where if you got less than 10 likes, people would like delete posts from Instagram because they didn't want to be seen as someone who was not adored on Instagram. So they would just get rid of it. And so that, I think, is why they're getting rid of likes, because they just didn't want people feeling like they couldn't be their authentic selves, or they would actually post less because they were afraid of bullying, or they were afraid of just getting any negative commentary on it. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, like, I really would, I've always been the worst at this, but I'm currently, if anybody wants to sort of empathetically come with me here on this journey, like, I'm currently trying really hard to not care about what other people think. Really hard. And I classically have a thin skin.
Interesting.
And I've always taken things really personally, but I'm trying really hard not to care what people think, because it's just like, not like it's just a thought or opinion that comes out of their mind. Like, it has very little to do with you, and most to do with them, good and bad.
Yeah.
So I think the best way, and this goes right back to being an entrepreneur, the best thing you can do is be authentic. And so the more authentic you are, the more people are going to like you, because empathy is going to be, I have a book coming out. I promise I'll have it coming out soon. At first it was like, it's coming out in November. Now it's like, it's coming out in December. And I'm like, oh, God, we'll see. But it's called Producing Empathy, because I'm obsessed with empathy. I think that it's on an online video because I feel like the reason why anyone clicks anything online is because of empathy, because they emotionally identify with something that they see. And I just think that empathy is the key to business as well. Whoever you're selling to, whatever you're selling to, just remember the core problem that you're solving, and like identify that like emotional connection that you can have there. So I think like a return to authenticity, and I mean, the best thing you could do if you're scared to put stuff online is put stuff online and just talk about how scared you are. I mean, just be authentic. I mean, be authentic at the end of the day. The thing is, you're saying, I mean, if somebody says that they're scared of putting things out online, I mean, you don't think this because we all have these complexes going on, but I mean, there's billions of people who feel the exact same way as you do,
100%.
So that's what it's all about.
Well, I know I've said this a million times on the show, but I literally started the show to get over my fear of public speaking. So I'm constantly working on it. I've been doing this almost 5 years now. And it's like, there's still some times that I still feel that anxiety of posting something online. So I don't know if that ever necessarily goes away. I feel like I've gotten over not caring what other people think anymore. Partly, I think, because I've been a designer and I've basically heard every good, bad, and other criticism about something I've designed over the years. So I've kind of developed a thick skin that way. And that, I think that's kind of applied to all the other stuff I've done in my career. But I think the realization that even the biggest people on the planet, or like rock stars, or like any of those people that get up on stage or put themselves out there in front of audience, like they still get anxious or anxiety, or they still get that like scared to go on stage. And even if it's their like millionth time doing it, right? A lot of these people still have the same feelings that you have.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, like, belief is really powerful. Like, if you just believe that you're going to win, you'll win. And this is like, I feel like I'm a pretty good public speaker, but I still get really nervous. And then I just sort of always say to myself before I get on stage or whatever, I'm just like, it's just gonna work out.
But you're also a teacher, right? So you're working on that constantly because you're in front of a class all the time.
That's true. I never think about that, but I think it's true. Like I do teach a lot, and that's probably part of the reason why I'm more practiced. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always a very hard thing, but at the end of the day, I think the good takeaway here is that when you are scared of things, especially when you're scared of being public, the most authentic thing you can do that will probably, you don't believe, like you may not believe this listening to me, but it is true that the more you can be honest about how scared you are, the more people will like you
Because they
because
relate
they
to
will
you.
see themselves in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's the key. It's just cool stuff. Like I would love like more of a return to authenticity, kindness, like real true service, like all of these things. I mean they're getting lost a little bit, right? So
100%.
um
Well, everybody's
yeah.
Instagram feed is basically just their highlight reel, and they're not even like highlights. Sometimes they're like faked highlights. So it's like, well, it's not even your real life. So it's like it's a weird thing I find with some of the social
I know,
media stuff,
yeah.
right? Like, so I totally get,
And it's never gonna, yeah.
but I like, to your point a few minutes ago, like if you posting this authentic stuff that's real, I think people relate to it more instead of this like created magical highlight that was just made out of thin air instead of it even being real, right?
Right, right. And I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I think always ask yourself what's the worst that can happen, because you're never gonna, you're like very rarely gonna be able to come up with like an answer that's convincing
Sure. No,
there.
100%.
Like, oh yeah, somebody will like say something bad about me, and I mean, like that will hurt my feelings. I don't know, like it's never like, it's not like it's never life or death or like that interesting. I mean, but the thing is, we have to be, and this goes to another thing that I'm obsessed with right now, is like not being afraid to be different
Yeah.
at all, because and because it can actually, if you zig when other people zag, you can win. That's what this Vesta program is. I was like, can I come up with a product that zigs when nobody else zags and help the people that I like the most?
Sure.
Great. Then I came up with Vesta. But it goes to my, my personal stuff too. Like I was born with short fingers,
Okay.
and like I was just born that way, and I hid my fingers under my like sweater, like growing up. Like I have still sense memory of like me walking around, and I was just scared of it. And I don't even know why. Like I guess scared of what other people would think. And then of course, asking myself what's the worst that can happen, and like literally nothing. And all of the worst times that came along with it was when I was ostracized or whatever. And it was just something I would never think would be public. And I mean, now, obviously now, if you go to my LinkedIn, like that's the story at the top of my LinkedIn, is how this might have like helped me make me the person and storyteller that I am now or whatever. And like not being afraid to be different, but instead like owning your differences as your like truth and your own authenticity, and then seeing how you can turn that into like a life's work. I think that that's like the whole thing. Like don't be afraid, because at the end of the day you'll build that legacy by going against the grain. Don't be contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. Just be like relentlessly authentic. And I think that you'll find you end up going the other direction a lot of the time.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that's actually really good advice.
Today's show is brought to you by FreshBooks, an all-in-one small business invoicing and accounting solution. I've been using FreshBooks for over a decade to send estimates for time and expense tracking, sending invoices, and collecting payments online. Then at tax time, I just generate a report that can be sent off to an accountant. To get a free trial of FreshBooks, please go to buildingthefutureshow.com/FreshBooks.
But you keep talking about teaching and PR. I want to talk about your thoughts around that industry right now, because obviously people have done PR for decades now, maybe even longer. But you have some interesting takes on how you're disrupting PR.
Well, when I teach it, I just say that you can go directly to the audience. You can create content. So I don't spend hardly any of my time teaching my PR classes at a college level. I don't teach them much about pitching to the media. I do teach them a little because I try to make my classes as practical as possible. And I know, and this is part of the thing, because I know that most of them are going to end up in public relations companies where they're still going to be judged on clips,
Right.
which basically means, did you get published somewhere? And that's your KPI, is where have you gotten the brand published or whatever it was. But I think the the best PR now is the content that you can create yourself, because it leads to, as we said, it leads to earned media. So I think that the Vesta program disrupts PR by basically doing that.
Okay.
We're gonna build our own media company, and we're gonna give you that, and then you're gonna get a bunch of earned media off of that, obviously, because the stuff that we do is gonna get picked up by other places because we're this third party. And we're basically going grassroots. It's disrupting PR, and it's disrupt, such a buzzword. Can I use a different word?
Sure.
Ugh. I don't know another one, but we're also kind of disrupting advertising, because everybody's going like, buy my stuff, and I'm just like, when I came up with the idea, it was basically, I wonder, like, can I create something where I could like partner with a brand, and they could basically tap me on the shoulder, and we could just go like grassroots style, like undercover, go create a community like for them, like below the radar. And that's sort of what it blossomed into, was this program. And nobody's doing anything like this. Everybody's trying to like bang a bunch of messaging from like a bunch of like different platforms and all of this stuff. And I'm a big fan in omnipresence, like huge fan of omnipresence. And yeah, I mean, that's just how I feel about it right now. Like if you have something to say, just go directly to people and say it, and motivate people to care about you. The best PR is done by your defenders. So why don't we create some defenders for you, right? Like all the like when Tesla was like, that's a bad example. Like every time that Apple does something that is like a PR disaster or something, like a PR disaster. I don't think they've had like a disaster, except for maybe like the Foxconn thing. But like when something bad happens, like somebody gets hurt because like an iPhone cable breaks and it like burns them or something. Like we used to do stories like this all the time at Business Insider. I mean, who do you think does the PR? Like Apple probably doesn't even bother releasing a statement or any of this crap. And if they do, it's like total whatever, because they know that the real PR is going to be done by the Apple defenders. They're going to be out there. They're out there with their iPhones, running around with their white iPods in, like doing that signaling marketing all over the world. And they're going to be like, oh yeah, but I'm not going to stop buying iPhones, and it's just a fluke and whatever. Like these defenders are going to do the PR work for you instead of you, I mean, what's going to mean more to you? Like Apple saying, we regret this, but trust us, our products are good. Or somebody else being like, it's just garbage. We all know these are good phones. I mean, that's going to be way more powerful. So I thought maybe we would create a program that like made those let's make super fans instead of just hammering messaging. And like, how powerful could that be? Like, that's what's exciting to me. And that's PR. Like, let's go grassroots PR. Like from down up instead of from top down.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And you're right. You basically can post something as simple as, what's a better operating system, like Android or iOS, and you will never come to a conclusion, because you will have both sides argue it to the death of both parties, right? And so it's interesting to your point that if you create a brand that people are so passionate about, they literally will argue it, their side and your brand, against another brand in their own free spare time. There's probably nothing better in the planet that can actually, or for your company, right?
Dude, I love it. And like, I have all this stuff swimming around in my mind, but I love conversations like this because I've never really articulated that. I'm just thinking about it right now. I was like, yeah, like the best PR is done in the trenches, not whatever the opposite of the trenches is, like on TV or in like press statements, or like, let's make sure that the Today Show has our press release to like get this out to as many people as possible. Like the best PR is done in like it's done in coffee shops and cafes. And wow, this is really good. I'm gonna go and like give a speech on this somewhere, because I'm like,
TED Talk.
But yeah, like I know I should TED Talk this stuff. But yeah, like I think the best PR is done between people, like in private spaces. But how do you access those people?
Yeah.
And how do you get them to love you, which is the real thing. So you get them to love you by giving them value. And you do that by giving them content and giving them good products and services. And caring, like truly showing that you care about them and that you're not a transaction. So I think that is like the truth of PR, and I think we'll find it in the grassroots.
Interesting. And I also think too, people forget nowadays that even if you have a small reach, like 100 or 200 diehard loyal fans is better than 1 million people that don't really care about your brand and maybe never bought your product, right?
Dude, that's so smart. Yeah, absolutely. I say this all the time. Totally. I mean, you would rather have, and like, it's more powerful to be niche like that anyway, because you may have a product that solves a very specific problem and it's not for everybody.
Sure.
But even if it is for a broad audience, your rabid, like crazy super fans are going to be so much louder than the negative, like lukewarm folks. And they're going to be way more powerful for you. So yeah, totally. You only need like a few people to move the needle. Like I think like our whole goal with Vesta is like, usually we'd like people to be in it for 5 months. I mean, I think we're making it month to month now, but we'd like for people to be there for 5 months so we can build a community. But if we can get a couple hundred rabid super fans in the community over a few months, and we can get, like 8 like brand evangelists to like trumpet your amazingness all over the internet, I just think it'll go a long ways. And it doesn't need to be thousands of people. It can just be, a couple hundred, just a community of people that love you, because a couple hundred people that really love you turns into a viral spree.
Yep.
Right? Whereas a few people that are like, this is okay, don't turn into much at all. And then the worst that can happen is if you get the negative, like you actually build negative communities of people that like hate you.
Yes.
And then they spread that all over the place. I don't think like all press is good press necessarily, but yeah, you're totally right. It's a great point.
Interesting, but we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself, Guide Social and Vesta?
Sure. Let's do it. I'm sad that we're at the end because this has been so much fun.
I know we talked a while. It's good.
I know. We talked a while, and we got into some fun topics. So the site is vestamedia.io. The page to find out more about Vesta is brands.vestamedia.io/getvesta. And if you want to find out more about me, I'm at mattjohnstononline.com. I'd love you to follow me. Like I try to really do what I preach, or whatever the phrase is. I mean, I make 100 pieces of social video content a month, and I try to just and it's all value. I never like sell anything, and I always just try to plaster the internet with that content on all my social channels. And just because I think it's really important that I sort of practice what I preach there and just try to give people value. And so, yeah, that's where you can find me. Thanks so much, Kevin. This has been really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time in your day to be on the show, and we will keep in touch because we have kept in touch. So have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.